What's up YouTube, this is Bison X79 guys, and I'm coming to you with my latest deck profile video for October 2020, and today guys, we're going to be looking at my Dogmatika deck. I finally was able to get all the cards I needed to build this deck. It took me a lot longer than I expected, but hell, patience is a virtue, and this deck is just so amazing. I just love these slower, grindy decks that can out-resource your opponents. It's just a very awesome archetype in my opinion, and my particular build is much more of a pure version rather than the Evoke version. I've had a lot more success with the pure version online rather than the Invoked, and to be honest, I feel that this version of the deck is a lot better than the Invoked. That's just my personal opinion. If you have a different opinion, that's very well, but this is my feelings towards the deck. I like the pure, and it works. It does what it needs to do, interrupts your opponents, shreds their extra deck, and out-resources them to the point where you can actually go in and just kill them. So, without further ado, we're jumping right into this. Start off with the Dogmatika monsters. 3 copies of Ecclesia. Ecclesia is the Stratos of the archetype. On summon, you're able to search your deck for any Dogmatika card, monster, spell, or trap to add to your hand. Very cool. If a monster special summon from the extra deck, whether it be yours or your opponent's, you can special summon her from your hand. Very awesome. And she can't be destroyed in battle with monsters from the extra deck, so if your opponent tends to end on the field with extra deck summon monsters, you can just special summon her out, leave her in defense position, and she's basically a wall. So, definitely worth a 3 of. Next up, we have Dogmatika Fraudalis, the Knighted. Also has a similar effect to Ecclesia, except his effect to summon special summon into the field is a quick effect, which means you can do it during your opponent's turn. And this is the one thing that you want to be doing, is you want to be saving that special summon for your opponent's turn, because if you control another Dogmatika monster on the field, you can actually negate one of your opponent's monster's effects, and that can cause a whole lot of havoc. Furthermore, whenever one of your Dogmatika monsters attacks, his effect can kick in and power boost all your monsters by 500 attacks. So definitely a worthwhile effect. And then next up we have 2 copies of Dogmatika Maximus. Maximus, you can special summon into the field by banishing any fusion, synchro, exceeds, or link monster from your graveyard. All you need is one of them. Get them onto the field, and then from there you can actually send 2 monsters with different names from your extra deck to the graveyard, and your opponent is forced to do the same, ripping apart your opponent's extra deck a couple cards at a time per turn. Definitely worth it, and this is how you out-resource your opponent over the long haul of the duel. So these are the 7 Dogmatika cards you need for this deck. To help augment them, I am running 3 copies of Sangin. Sangin is just an amazing card. You can use a normal summon on him, link him off for Amirage, and then go into Secure Gardener for that little link play to set up your graveyard for a Maximus summon. You could also search your deck for any monster with 1500 or less attack from your deck to your hand. More than likely, you'll be searching out your hand traps rather than Ecclesia or Maximus, primarily because you don't want to be utilizing your searches on your Dogmatika cards, because you won't be able to use them the same turn. And speaking of hand traps, we got 3 copies of Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring. She basically says no to your opponent touching their deck. 2 copies of DD Crow. A lot of graveyard-dependent decks out there in this meta. Dragon Link, if you hit the right card, you could actually just shut them down. Eldritch, Golden Lord, or even any of their traps. And then, of course, you also have Infernal Knights, where you basically can banish their lower level monsters from the graveyard, so they won't be able to come back on the field and equip to your opponent's monsters. So definitely a worthwhile interruption here. We have 3 copies of Effect Failure. Both DD Crow and Effect Failure are not hard once per turns, so you can open them with multiple copies, and your opponent's just running decks. You can actually run in the deck. You could actually interfere with them multiple times during the course of one turn. It's just very awesome, and a great way to really interfere with your opponent. And then last but not least, the end-all hand trap. We have 3 copies of Nibiru, the primal being. Opponent special summons 5 times. This card basically is just like the Meteor. that ended it. The dinosaurs comes crashing down, wipes out your opponent, and basically a lot of times they're forced to end their turn. So this is the hand trap lineup. That's it for the monsters. On to the spells. So we got some very cool cards. Well, we got 3 copies of Dark Rule No More. I prefer a more go second blind approach. This card just helps, especially if I don't open up with enough hand traps to interfere with my opponent. This guy can just shut down their field, allow me to play uninterrupted, and just allow me to start picking apart that board during my first turn. I'm also running 2 copies of Dogmatika Nation and 1 Terraforming. Dogmatika Nation basically adds an extra layer of protection where my opponent can target or destroy my monsters, Dogmatika monsters, with card effects of monsters that were special summoned from the extra deck. Very cool. If my Dogmatika monsters attack into one of my opponent's monsters, this card will actually destroy the monster they battle with if the monster is still on the field. And if this card itself is ever destroyed, you get a search for another Dogmatika card except for itself. I am running Terraforming in this deck as a 3rd copy. You don't really want to waste your Ecclesia's search on Nation unless you've already opened up with Maximus. So that's it for those. And for extra consistency spells, we are running 3 copies of Nadir Servant, the Rhoda of the Dogmatika R-Type. Send a monster from your extra deck to your graveyard, search out your Dogmatika card. This deck can put up a lot of cards into the graveyard, so 2 copies of Pot of Harvest just to recycle your materials back into your deck and extra deck so you can reutilize them. Very cool. Helps give the deck a little bit more of a grind game. And then, of course, we also have 1 copy of Upstart Goblin, a free draw. You know, this deck is not going to take care of your opponent. Has 1,000 extra life points, primarily because it's all about out-resourcing your opponent. So once their resources are gone, you can just go right at their life points. To help grind out their games, we're going to have 3 copies of Dogmatika Punishment. Send a monster from your extra deck to your graveyard. Pop one of your opponent's cards off the field. You have to target that card, just making sure. Depending on what you send, depends on what else you can do. A lot of times you're going to be getting a lot of extra pops by sending this, or even the Fossil Skull Knight from your extra deck. To help interfere and further affect negate, we have 3 copies of Infinite Impermanence. Very awesome card. Can utilize it multiple times during your turn. So again, multiple negations during an opponent's turn can really hurt them bad. And last but not least, we have Shadal Schism. Continuous spell, continuous trap that can actually grave fuse for the Shadal R-Type. Very awesome. Easy to get out of this deck and allows you to go into both Winda or Construct very easily. Winda can help slow your opponent down by only allowing 1 special summon per turn. Construct can allow you to help bust through your opponent's board by dealing with special summon monsters. So that's it for the main deck. On to the extra. 2 copies of Titaniclad the Ash Dragon. Sending this card from your extra deck to your graveyard. During your end phase, you're getting a search for a Dogmatika monster to add to your hand. So a lot of times you're going to be searching out your floor to add to your hand for that extra negate during your opponent's turn. 3 copies of Elder Entity Nist. I like Elder Entity Nist at 3 primarily because whenever you send her to the graveyard, it's an automatic card pop. Doesn't matter what card on your opponent's field, it's just going to take it off the field. So you get that extra level of disruption. 2 copies of Fossil Warrior Skull Knight. This card you actually have to activate while in the graveyard, but it still gets the same result as Nist. You're popping a monster off your opponent's field. So extra field control and removal. We have the Shadal package here. We have Winda, holds down your opponent from special by only allows 1 special summon per turn. El Shadal Contracts, again, board breaker. I have also found very useful if your opponent is able to pop Schism before you're able to use it. You can actually send Construct off of either Nadir or Punishment to actually get it back into your hand. So it's in there for recovery. And then, of course, you have a Pocket-Loan. Pocket-Loan you want to send to the graveyard to search your Schism into your hand initially. So Very cool. Those are your 3 Shaddolls. One lone synchro in this deck is going to be Cyframe Lord Omega. He's pretty self-explanatory. Once he's in that graveyard, he's allowed to target one of your banished monsters and get it back into your graveyard. So you can reutilize something like your Fossil Skull Knight to pop cards, or bring back a Shaddol monster you might have fusion summon with to actually fusion summon again if you still have Schism on the field. So definitely worth having. And of course, if you're ever in a mirror match against another Dogmatika deck, Cyber Dragon Nova and Invoke Mechaba definitely worth having. Send Nova to the graveyard by your opponent's card's effect, and you're able to special summon out Mechaba, which is an addition on the gate. So definitely worthwhile combo and trap for your opponent. And then, of course, I mentioned this with Sangan. You have Almirage and Secure Garna. Almirage can help with normal summon monsters by bringing yourself back out, but mostly you're going to be utilizing it to bring out Secure Garna to protect from effect damage or taking battle damage during your turn, which is actually very awesome. Guys, that is it for my Dogmatika deck for the October 2020 format. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, give it a thumbs up. If you want to see more content like this on my channel, make sure to subscribe, enable notifications so you don't miss any uploads. Check out the description box below. Find the links to my affiliates, tcgplayer.com as well as sidedeckversus.com. Great resources for any Yu-Gi-Oh player. Follow me on social media, and if you guys want to help grow my community to even greater heights, the link to my Discord server is in the description box below. Join the conversation. We'll love to have you. As always, guys, until next time, peace.